Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday to you. Thank you for being here. I am Quincy Armorer, the Artistic Director of Black Theatre Workshop, and we are here online on our Facebook Live for another installment of one of our latest initiatives, our In Conversation With series. So it's wonderful to have you all here. It's been a few weeks. It's nice to be back. Today is Thursday, October the 22nd. We are several months into this new world that we are living in. On behalf of everyone at BTW, I'm hoping that you and all of your loved ones are thriving and taking good care of yourselves and of each other. We need that now more than ever. It's been a very, very interesting time for us at Black Theatre Workshop and also for our local theater community. I just want to talk about that for a brief second. I think with everything that's been going on, there was a glimmer of hope for live performance to be happening once again. And up until recently, we had our friends at Table d'Hôte Theater had their On Point series, which did really well. We ourselves were working on a project as part of the National Arts Center's Grand Acts of Theater that was supposed to be happening on October the 11th. And this was an excerpt of the play Black and Blue Matters by Omari Newton, directed by Diane Roberts. And we were going to be performing an excerpt of it responsibly outdoors to a socially distanced audience because we would have had that capacity outdoors. But then as Montreal was upgraded into a COVID red zone, we had to cancel that presentation, which was very, very unfortunate. This also happened at the same time as our friends over at the Centaur Theater were in the middle of a run of their Portico project, which ended up being cut short as well. So little glimmers of hope taken away briefly, temporarily because of the red zone, but hopefully, knocking on wood, that it won't be too long before we are able to have some sense of more live performance again. We've been seeing a lot of things happening online. Just last night, I believe, our friends at the Centaur had an online reading of a new play by Steve Galluccio, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more activities like that coming up. So please look out for new online and live content coming out from the theater community. We need the support of our patrons and audiences now more than ever. So if you find an event happening in the theater community, please try to log in and offer whatever support that you can. We would very much appreciate it. So for today, I'm really excited actually to be having this conversation. This is an important one because Black Theatre Workshop, as you know, is celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. Which is a huge, huge milestone. And in just a couple of weeks, we're going to be announcing what our altered programming is going to be for the 50th anniversary season. But on the occasion of this milestone, I wanted to bring in to have a conversation with someone who's been a huge part of the organization, quite literally from the very, very beginning. Those of you who are familiar with Black Theatre Workshop for a number of years and decades know that this gentleman needs no introduction, but he does deserve one. And so I'm just going to tell you a little bit right now about my guest for today, Dr. Clarence Bayne. So, Dr. Clarence Bayne, he is director of the Institute of Community Entrepreneurship and Development at the John Molson School of Business at Concordia University. He is originally from Trinidad and Tobago and moved from the West Indies to study at the University of British Columbia, where he obtained a BA in 1958, and then a Master's of Economics in 1960, and subsequently a PhD at McGill in 1977, and taught at Concordia University. He has made so many contributions to the Black community in Quebec, especially in the arts and in his development work. He's been affiliated with the Black Community Resource Center, the Black Studies Center, Black Theatre Workshop, and many other organizations here in the city. He is a past artistic director of Black Theatre Workshop, a current board member, past president, vice president. He's been around for a very long time, and I just thought it would be really great to allow him to be here to share some information with us about the early days of this company that has given so much, not just to Black artists, but to the Black community here in Montreal. So I am very thrilled to welcome this afternoon and in conversation, the wonderful Dr. Clarence Bayne.
Hi.
Hello, Clarence.
Hi, Quincy. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Well, I am surviving, a little bit trapped in the house, but at my age, it's not as terrible as it could have been as when I was in my 30s and needed to be outside more than inside.
Mm-hmm.
So, but nevertheless, the very sense that you can't go out as freely as you used to does take a little bit of a toll on you. But
Yeah.
other than that, you all are keeping me so busy that I don't notice.
Well, it's a good thing because as you've proven over the past 50 years that you can keep up with a busy pace. So we're going to keep throwing as much as we can at you.
Yeah, it's like breathing, I think, like that. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep me out of mischief, or let's say, or falling on the pavements or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I was saying, Clarence, I'm really happy to have you here. Because this company has done so much for the arts industry, and in particular for Black artists working in the professional theater. I mean, I'm a Montrealer. I'm a Black artist. BTW has been a part of my ambitions for so long, and in many ways, I feel like I owe so much of the success that I've had in my career to you and to the others that were a part of BTW in those early days. And I wanted to have you here to talk a little bit about that, maybe share some of the history with our patrons who might not know some of the details about the origins of
Maybe I could just start by giving a kind of sense of where we were and where we are in a very global sense first. Like the Black Theatre Workshop was created out of the Trinidad and Tobago Association, and it was created by the what is called the Drama Committee of the Trinidad and Tobago Association, and essentially it was created by a guy by the name of Arthur Goddard and myself. And I guess later on, as we think, we will tell the story of how this came about, actually. But the first public performance of the Trinidad and Tobago Drama Committee as a Black workshop was the Calypsopera done by Johnny Cowan, who essentially you could almost say that he was the first artistic director of in anticipation of Black Theatre Workshop.
Right.
And he did this Calypsopera, as he called it, was taking calypsos to tell a story, to tell our story, essentially. But the whole presentation was song, movement, calypsos, even the steel pan on occasions. And we won't talk about the structure. We could be critical of the structure, but that's what it was. It was an attempt to use all those things to tell our story. The second Calypsopera was about 3 or 4 years later. The first was in 1965. The second was in 1968, as I remember, and it was called Calypso in the Flesh. So you had Facts and Fancy and Calypso in the Flesh. Johnny got a job in Ottawa and was leaving, and basically left this thing, the drama committee, in my hands. I must tell you that this is going to be my first experience in terms of the organization of dramatic cultural events, right? And but it doesn't mean that I wasn't involved. I'm very heavily involved in the art and culture of the Caribbean and Trinidad growing up. It was all around me, and I was just involved. That's it. So it was not, a painful process. Later on in the Black Theatre Workshop, it's became, over the years, as it is today, one of the oldest Black companies having a professional performances on an annual basis.
Yeah,
it's not the first Black theater company, but it is the oldest Black theater company. As a matter of fact, before we started out as a company here in Montreal, there was the Negro Theatre Arts Club. right, that existed before us. But they sort of faded away for a whole number of reasons. We might get into it, and we became the company. We worked together with them, actually. We got together at points in time to set the season so that we didn't clash, because we found that we were using exactly the same actors. So we had no choice but to schedule what we do, because those were the only actors that we had available for us. Of course, that improved tremendously as the years went by, and I guess we'll also talk about that.
Right.
The mission of the Black Theatre Workshop was to initially, it started out to create more unity in the presentation of the Caribbean culture. It was really Caribbean initially, and it drew upon art and culture as presented by and represented by Trinidad and Tobago. So that means that we were all our presentations tended to represent dance, movement, song, etc., and that kind of events. Of course, it changed to be more North American in its form and later on, but that's initially how it started. Also, the first set of planes that we really did in any consistent way whatsoever came from plays like Derek Walcott, written in Trinidad, etc. And it was, call it nostalgic, all right? It really dealt with Blackness, essentially, and it dealt with the entrepreneurial reactions to the imposition of British culture on us, and the enigma and problem that we went through and still going through, I imagine, in the Caribbean, in order to find an identity that we could live with comfortably. Like he called it, an identity that didn't make him, as he put it, feel these two streams of poison coursing through my veins. And he was talking of his British and white origin and his African origins, right? So we're still trying to be comfortable with that, but that's what the work that we did initially. Yeah. And of course, the Black Power movement and the African liberation movement and then Black Renaissance around the world came into play, and of course impacted on the things that we were doing, and we became more of a Black theater company, not just a Caribbean theater.
Right. So that's a good segue into something else that I wanted to ask you about, because, you know, as I mentioned, Black Theatre Workshop is in its 50th year. And so what you're talking about now is the state of the company and the theater community in the late 60s and early 70s. And I'm really curious to know for you and for your contemporaries, like, what was the Montreal mainstream theater scene like at that time? Because we know that the Centaur Theater was very, very young. It started, I guess, in 1967. So what were you seeing, or what were you not seeing, might be the better question, in theater at the time then?
Well, let's put it that way. In terms of the people that became involved in the Black Theatre Workshop, and I need not tell you that these are people who have a certain sensitivity and a search for something that expresses them and that make them feel comfortable. There was nothing that we could really assume. It reminded me personally, I don't know how with other person, of going to school in Trinidad, and theater was only Shakespeare, and I didn't understand what the hell this Shakespeare was all about, right? Mm-hmm. To me, art and culture was carnival. It was the Indian festivals. It was the parties and dances that came out of the carnival culture. It was the Afro West Indian songs that we heard from Cuba, because they had an incredible transmission system. So we would hear the Cuban music, which was basically African Spanish music, or Venezuelan. So to me, Shakespeare growing up was, what is this thing? It was weird. That, to some extent, is what the 60s were like, because we really did not begin to create a theater that reflected our experiences and our rebellion until essentially the 60s.
Right.
What went on before was an attempt to really to replicate the excellence of so-called British styles. I think we can honestly say that we started off from the beginning saying, this is the way that we know it, we do it, that makes sense to us. And we are going to do it in a way that we can be proud of it. We're not going to be slack about it. You're not going to start a calypso and finish and not be able to finish it because you thought it was a joke, right? Yeah. And nobody is listening. No, we start a calypso, we're going to finish it, right? So really the 50s and 60s, the theater was not a theater I would describe as reflective of Black theater as we know it today. And it did create sort of discomfort. I am sitting looking at and something I am not involved and in it.
Yeah. So what was the reception, when Black Theatre Workshop and started to produce its work and members of the Black
the interesting thing
themselves, what was that like?
The interesting thing that we're living in a province was also going through its own rebellions. The French were going through its rebellions against British forms. Even English-speaking white people were going through rebellions because they didn't consider themselves English. They were North American. So when we started doing this type of work, it was novel and tended to attract. People wanted to see what we were doing. I say they tended to want to see what we were doing. I didn't say that they wanted to do what we were doing, but they were interested in what we were doing.
Yeah.
So the audiences were always had a significant white audience of both French and English. Of course, the French-speaking people at that time were very bilingual. They felt they had to be. They also reacted to the fact that they felt that they had to speak English, but they were bilingual, so they could participate. I think some people like the fact that we didn't follow the strict British form and structures in terms of how we spoke and what we sang, I mean, but like, for instance, if we were doing the Black Experience was an improved form of the Johnny Callahan Fact and Fancy. In other words, we didn't end in a confusion of mass. We ended in a sort of more or less traditional way, right? But the language that we use was not Shakespearean or any British or Wordsworth or any sort. We use the language of the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. I mean, when we are presenting the situation of a change, the rebellion between the socioeconomic rebellion between the Americans taking over the economics of Trinidad, so to speak, during World War II, and we were repeating Sparrow impression of it. We're doing it, Jean and Dinah, they're around the corner. I bet it's something they're selling. I bet it's something they're selling. I mean, so it's that kind of language. Yeah. Or Benwood Dick. You come to talk to the woman about his daughter, and she wants to protect her daughter against this wayward. But he is simply saying, I come to talk to your daughter, I know she well. I guess she already. And I guess she already. Tell she is Mr. Benwood who come to talk to she. We didn't compromise in terms of the rhythm and the delivery. So there was a certain kind of interest in what we were doing. Although one kind of the council officer who was assigned to evaluate the company and to determine whether it was worthy of being invited to apply, not give them a grant, whether it was worthy to be invited. Certainly, we are convinced that you have the incredible capacity for cultural representation, but we're not sure whether how good you are at theater. If you could understand where we had to fight from, right? We're not sure because we deliberately did not present or structure our presentations according to British and European formats. I'm not saying that it avoided it, but it didn't become obsessed with maintaining those structures.
And how much of was that a factor in the company's ability to secure the funding at that time? Because I know that there was.
It was a big factor. I mean, right across the country, all the way from Vancouver to Halifax, was the same problem, right?
Yeah.
And there was a major battle from both, I would say, largely from inside the Black community, and even from some of the white European peoples who did not see themselves wanting to be British. They weren't British and they didn't want to be British. They just want to be Canadian, and they want to experiment with a more diverse and open form of expression. They also were fighting to get the traditional Canada Council agencies to see professionalism different to the way in which they interpreted it. We weren't the only ones that were fighting, but we certainly joined the battle full-blooded, indicating to the funding agencies that there is more theater than just British theater, and that professionalism in your British sense of professionalism in the theater is not going to be the same and should not be the same, and we will not accept your making it the same.
Right.
So it wasn't just our voice; it was the voice of Canadians essentially that caused them to have to find a way to incorporate other cultural forms of art and culture.
Mm-hmm. And as you say, like that brought about, I think, some major changes in the funding agencies.
Very formal.
Yeah, absolutely. And
stated,
we've benefited from it now over the years. We're doing quite well, particularly in terms of funds, from the Canada Council, as well as provincially and municipally as well. But a question that I wanted to have is, once BTW did start to secure that funding in the early days, what was the nature of the evolution of the company? Because
it did have an impact on the whole concept of we went through, and we're still going through, the whole notion of the give back, the so-called give back. There's been a feeling it seems existing in the community that BTW has taken much from the community in terms of its arts and culture and its stories, but hasn't given back as much. We've been trying to understand exactly what that means, and it has been changing. But essentially, what seemed to have happened, to give you an example, there was a time that almost everybody on the board of directors used to attend rehearsals for play. I can't remember the last time that happened. And I can tell you that I have missed that, right? That is a part of the professionalism that has evolved as BTW had to move its practices to accommodate what the funding agencies considered professional. For instance, in one year we did a play by Borden, and it was God's Trombones. For 1 week, there were endless lineups around the Union United Church waiting to see the show. The church was jumping.
Yeah.
Borden was an incredible professional. There's no question about that, and he was the only one the only character backed by a choir, right? We got ratings on the provincial level that went off the sky. And in one sector, we got 0, set building. Well, why we got 0%? Because it was at the church and we didn't create a set, so to speak. That's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was so what did I do? That means in the future now, when we want to make sure that we get our grants repeated, we avoided going in community places that would not be considered a professional space.
Right.
We consciously avoided that. As we consciously avoided that, we move further away from the engagement of the community, from the closeness of the community. Right. Mm-hmm. This is something that Winston talked about in the late 80s and 90s. It's carryover because we did a production called Cantata. We did it in collaboration with the Seagull. It's called the Seagull now. It was the YMCA at that point in time, right? And they had a Yiddish company with.
Yep.
All right. We got a grant, but it was a professional grant. The production was between ourselves and the persons who wanted to do this play. Cantata was really about the settlement of Blacks in Vancouver and all Vancouver Island and the story about Blacks' introduction to Canada. Right. And so they wanted to do that. So they wanted to do it to us because we are the only company around that have a grouping of artists that would legitimize this. It cost $69,000. We only sold 6,000 or 9,000. They ended up with a big. Our share of the thing was that we had a $15,000 deficit. That was our share of the debt, right? But it was considered professional and highly rated by the funding agencies. We did, however, a play written by Leon St. Martin. We did it in a community setting, in the community. It was about called Christmas Carols. For 2 weeks, the place was packed out.
Yeah.
We spent $5,000 and made $10,000. And we got no ratings for it.
Right.
That's the kind of thing we had to fight against.
So when you had to make those accommodations, then would you say that it felt like you had to compromise on your art and on the work that you wanted to do?
Oh, we did. I mean, you have to say that BTW did compromise. It became more professional in those kinds of ways. We moved the production to what is called professional houses. I can't remember the last time that we did a production in a place that would be or might be considered not a professional space, right? And there can be no question about it. That's the reason that we did that, because it gave us better ratings and a better opportunity to. But that was necessary because we were lucky to start with. For about 20 years, we never paid anybody anything, not a penny. Imagine we had a grant for $5,000 that was supposed to be financed in this trial period. We would do, as a matter of David Edgecombe was the person working with me at the time. And we were doing these plays to demonstrate to Canada Council that we were a competent, capable company of doing theater and presenting, right? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the year, the $5,000 turned to net income of $7,500 because we made some money in all the plays and we never paid anybody a penny. People gave for free.
Right.
In part, it was their determination to prove that they were deserving of. It was also part of the determination of their involvement in art or the love of the form of expression, right? So, at some point in time, you have to eat, right?
True enough.
So you're going to make a compromise somewhere. Look, if it means that we have to hire a professional artistic director, we will, if they're going to pay us for it, why not do it? And if they're going to pay us some money to pay a professional administrator, why not? The letter that we got from Canada Council when they eventually agreed to support us in a formal way.
Yeah.
It's stated clearly. It's go and get yourself a professional artistic director. Go and get yourself a professional administrator. We will pay you so much. Multiculturalism Directorate will pay you so much on those conditions.
Right. Right. And I mean, I guess it's a fair thing to comment on now that once that did start to happen for Black Theatre Work.
But they never honored the amount of money that we were expecting from it, but they remain honest to the fact that they supported.
Right.
In some way.
Well, yeah, and then I mean that I think that move and that support helped the company to evolve, and well, evolve, yes, but probably expand, because you were there through all of the evolution, really, when the company started to bring in other elements like the school tour that we are still doing and the Vision Gala that we are still doing. All of those initiatives there.
Let me tell you something. Those things that we are doing, we are considered unusual in Quebec because they're more specialized. You go into the school tours, it's segmented into so many different parts. We were told that we are the only company that Quebec funds to do vision celebration. They consider that as part of our output, to do school tours across all sectors, whether it be under 5 to 10, 15 to 20, 20 to 20. This whole range, in town or out of town, we're the only one. And then to do professional theater in addition, and to run a school, so to speak. Yeah. We are the only one.
Mm-hmm.
Here's that funding that way.
Yeah.
Everybody else they would see as not being focused.
Right. Well, as someone who shortly out of theater school had one of his first professional contracts as a performer in the BTW school tour, I, for one, am so grateful for that initiative in the company, and I love how it's evolved and grown over the years. I'm looking forward to coming up soon to announce what we have in store for this, the 50th season. But I wanted to find out from you, Clarence, looking back on all of the shows that have happened over the decades that you've been around, what are some of your, do you have a favorite production? Do you have a favorite show that BTW produced? Or is it that there's just so many that you can't narrow it down?
I have some favorites. How No Black Man.
Right.
Is one of my favorites. The show by Baki that that singer.
Which one?
Anyhow, it will come back to me. That musical that Baki wrote. That was.
I'm not sure. I'll see.
Marvin Gaye show. Anyhow, we'll come back to that. That's Raisin in the Sun is a definite favorite of one of my shows. Of course, I love the show that I produced. I guess you would expect that.
Well, that one we did twice. You were talking about the one in 1979, correct?
I really love that. I mean, Salpone, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Black girl in search of her God. I mean,
a black girl in search of God. Yeah.
No, look. I mean, if I might say it myself, there are very few Black theater workshop plays that I didn't resonate incredibly. How a Black mother says, "I love you." I love that.
Yes, that was just last year. I
was crazy about the mountaintop.
Yeah, That was one of our. The Mountaintop is the most recent time that we received the Meta for Best Production for that play, and then had a little bit of a tour. That was a good one. Tristan and Letitia really, really shined in that show. It's one of my favorites too. Actually.
What's the name of the show of Angelique?
Angelique by Lorena Gale.
That in so many ways, so many, and of course that show about what it was. I mean, we had to close the box office just because we ran out of tickets and people were phoning. We did it at the Sadie Bronfman. It was Colored Women. That show.
Oh, you're talking about For Colored Girls who have considered suicide.
Yeah. That was incredible in more ways than one because it had an incredible controversy.
What was the controversy?
About the casting, and all the controversy did was to make it sell better at Center. All right. We had this casting controversy that one of the women, I think she was from Africa, but she was she considered herself and was attracted to and associated with African culture because she was African. She was Donnie hired her, but then we had some reaction from the other cast because they didn't think that her Africanness was enough,
right, to
make her a legitimate. Donnie then did not call her back because of the fractiousness that came out around this. She then went to Maurice Podbury, who was not happy about the fact because they felt that we were dropping her from the production because she was white. All right. The newspaper critic there took it up and made a big hurrah about it. Mm-hmm. We got into a huge fight about it because we never backed down from it. Right. And what it did was to create a wave of sales that I don't think we could have created it if we didn't have that action, right?
Yeah.
But that was a great. Quite apart from that type of debate that took place, it was a debate about casting and about the play itself and our rights to make a decision and all the rest of it. And we took the position that we had a right to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And we weren't apologizing in any way for it, right? And stood our grounds on it, right? Absolutely. So there were some of those kinds of interesting, but that was an excellent play. It just sold like, the tickets just flew off the counter on both at the Sadie Bronfman show as well as the Centaur show that we did.
Yeah, and Maurice Podbury, who you mentioned earlier, for those who
Morris, it was an interesting intervention he made because Morris was a very pro mixed casting and was very pro Black and socialistic. He ran out of South Africa because the government was after him because he was a part of the whole anti South African apartheid movement, and was very pro-socialist in terms of the restructuring of that.
Yeah. So, I guess I should just mention, Clarence, for those who are watching who might not know, Maurice Podbury was the founder and artistic director of the Centaur Theatre for the first, I think, 25 or 27 years of the Centaur. And BTW, we used to do a lot of our productions there at the Centaur.
Oh, no, they were a great support of the BTW.
And still are, actually. That's one of the great things, I think.
Not only in terms of space and that, but even at the in Ottawa when they were asked about the company, its evolution, its problems, its deficiencies, the permanent. He really supported us internally. In fact, the BTW had a lot of support from some very, progressive white people.
Right.
We got the first real breakthrough in funding didn't come from Canada Council.
Came from where?
It came from CAC. And it came as a result of a young woman at the time by the name of Vladimira Pergat. She was English speaking. She was very supportive of English. The René Lévesque government was in power, which is to say the FLQ people were in power. Bill 101 was being implemented, and she was married to a Peakist, but she was a pro English supporter, right? But she was married to a person who was Peakist, and she, when they were having the cultural reform of the arts in Quebec, got in touch with me and said, I haven't seen any presentations coming from the Black community. Why aren't you making a presentation in support of? I said, because we didn't know, we weren't invited. Mm-hmm. And she worked with me to get us to make a presentation to the commission, which consisted of liberals plus Peakists. And I went there and I started off my presentation by simply saying to them, I'm not going to speak to you in French, because if I speak to you in French, I will be just making a second concession in my life to reject my culture. And my culture, as I understand it, was not French or English, but I have no choice but to speak the language that oppressed me. And the Peakist guy got up in this thing and he said, Dr. Bayne, you're joking, of course. I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to speak to you in English because that's the only language I know. Next day, the people said he dared to speak to them in English. But they made a commission. They said, look, we are going to fund the theater workshop, provided that it makes a commitment to professionalism. And my response was, do you know of any artist that doesn't want to be professional?
Nice.
And the first grant that they gave us, the first one was $25,000. The second upgrade of the grant was $50-something thousand.
Wow.
That is over a period of 5 years as compared to the time we were raging a battle with Canada Council just to go from 25,000 to 26,000.
Yeah. Well, that's probably, I mean, it's gotten a little bit easier. I can tell you now, as someone who writes some of the grants for Black Theatre Workshop, that it's changed a little bit, which is really great. But it wasn't always easy. I think even in the past few years, those increases that we got, they were hard come by.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just because
part of the problem there is at the point that they were willing. Actually, they really came around. They had a meeting with us and they sat down and said, "We need to fix this because we have done." Basically, said, "We have not treated you right. We need to." But the problem is, we had friends in the council itself, but the decisions were being made by artists from all over the country who knew nothing about us.
Yeah.
And the improvements that you're talking about only came when you all started to become engaged in the meetings and met artists from different parts of they began then to understand more.
Yeah. And then technology certainly helped that, because it's a little bit easier to get to know more about the company from across the country. So that was a huge factor.
Plus the fact they were committed to the regional theaters.
Yeah.
They couldn't just, and the monies that were coming to them were short, because you had governments like the Harper government and so on, conservatives cutting back on culture. So they may have wanted to help. I say may have.
They have.
But there wasn't a sufficient room to play. Yeah. But they couldn't take the money from the regional theaters. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't fight with and therefore that means they would have to be fighting with the provinces, right?
Yeah,
so
I guess
it took time. Actually, it took time and continuously digging and fighting.
Well, and I think, but it was good to be doing that funding because I think it brought about so much change. I think it's that kind of initiative and drive that led some of the councils to have new initiatives and programs, like the equity office that came out of the Canada Council, from which BTW was able to secure additional funding. Like all of those things, I think, snowballed into helping all, particularly the diverse organizations, be able to come a little bit further advanced. I'm just gonna I could stay here and talk to you forever, Clarence, but we're gonna be running out of time in just the next little bit. But there's a couple other things I wanted to just ask you, because as I mentioned, you're a part of the company for so long. You've been there to see, the expansion of the seasons, the addition of Vision and School Tour. You've been through right now 13 artistic directors over the 50 years, and the company has attained a level of success that I think we can all be proud of. So my question would be, now that we're at 50 years and going into our next 50 years and beyond, what is your hope or dream?
Part of my hope has seemed to have been accomplished. I will hope that the company would remain as radical as it was when we started. And I was indeed very happy when I looked at your last, what it is. It's not your protest, but your statement about where you stand on the Black Lives Matter situation. And that I actually sat back and say, hey, these guys seem to be just as bad as we were when we started up. But so it's good to see that you're still standing there, you're still recognizing where your culture comes from and what it is you're doing and why you're involved in theater. It's not just a question of having a job, but it's a question of living a life and having it respected, right? So that's still there. But I like the idea when you simply need, we are oppressed, but we will rise. And make no mistake about it, I get that impression, we will rise. So I'm very happy about that position, that you still have this passion. You're not. I don't think we were ever irrational. We were always rationally in opposition to the oppressed state that we find ourselves in. So as long as we continue to stand out there to be rational about it, not just to be irrational about what we demand, but to be rational and to stick to opposition no matter what, ultimately we will, as you says, we will rise. Ultimately, you will rise.
We will rise.
The next thing I think that I would like to see the company do is to definitely make a move to get recognition as a regional, culturally diverse company, not just a company that waits every. So to get the same kind of consideration, say at Cento or one of these companies, but not as a regional theater, but a regionally diverse cultural. Because we are making this country look good. They want to say to the United Nations and everybody that they are respecting their concepts of multiculturalism and diversity. So therefore, we're not going to do it for free. We're going to do it because we help to have the capacity to do it. We need to have the capacity. We need to eat. We need to live, according to one of our artistic directors many years ago. He left saying to Canada Council, I am leaving because you have not kept your word. And I want to have a car too. I want to have a family. I want to be able to live. I mean, that's a solid statement.
Well, it's so nice to hear you say that and to hear about what your hopes are for the future. I'm happy to know that you're content with where the company is and has gotten to. But I want to acknowledge, Dr. Bayne, that people like myself who are Black theater artists here in town and honestly across the country owe such a huge debt of gratitude to you and to those who were there in those early days. Black Theatre Workshop has done so much to launch the careers of people like me, and I wouldn't have the career that I have right now if it weren't for you and for many of the people there. So I just want to on behalf of those of us who are working and thriving in this business, thank you for all that you have done for us. We are standing on your shoulders. We will rise because there are our ancestors and our elders, our leaders that paved the way for us, and we couldn't be able to do what we do if it weren't for the dedication and talent and contribution and drive and tenacity of people such as yourself. So I just want to say that in front of everybody. And perhaps, Clarence, if you can, 50 years of a company means that a lot of people who were there in the early days are no longer a part of the company, and in some cases are no longer with us. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe, if there are some people's names that you would like to mention who were
there are people that are now, that were with us, that really put a lot of work into helping this company to be what it is. You have like Johnny Cayon. Yeah, he is now dead. You have Lydon Allen, who you have Leon St. Martin, you have Jimmy Horsham, incredible Jeff Henry, Bert Henry.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people. Lorena Gale. No, that was a sad. She was taken much too young, actually. Much. You have Errol Slew. Well, he was the black actor that Morris turned to present all those black South African plays that spoke out against apartheid. He is now dead. You have people that have disappeared from the scene, they may be still alive, like Violet Bolden, but you have Errol Sitahal, you have Herbert Webb, Ken Pilgrim, Ken, who always tells me every time I meet him, Clarence, I bust my belly for this company. Right? Yeah, these are the people that we have to remember. People whose homes that we emptied of their furniture, they would run when they see us coming, because we always went and grabbed their furniture from their homes for sets. Right? Yeah. So we just want the community to know that we may have become professional, but we haven't forgotten them.
Well, I think that's probably a really, really great sentiment to wrap up on. We haven't forgotten our community. We know where we have come from. We know who was a part of it, and those who might not be with us anymore in person are certainly with us in thought and in heart and in love and in gratitude. And speaking of gratitude, Clarence, Dr. Clarence Bayne, thank you so much for being here today. You are such a wealth of information and knowledge about this organization. It's really great to sit down with you and have a little chat and to share that with our public, so people have a little bit more of an inside scoop of what this company actually means to the Black communities, to Black theater artists across the country. I'm so grateful to you for everything that you have done for me and for this company. And it was great to have you here. So thank you for being my guest this afternoon. I hope you had a good time.
I had a great time. It's always great to be talking about this company, for the simple reason that it has been a successful company. And hopefully you guys will make it possible that the next generation will be telling you what you were saying to me. Thank you.
I hope so. I hope so. That would be great.
Yeah.
And on that lovely note, I want to thank also all of our viewers for being here to watch and listen. with us this afternoon. We so appreciate your kindness and your loyalty to BTW. As I mentioned at the top of the session, we are going to be announcing our season in the next couple of weeks on November the 5th, so please look out for that. Go out and support our local theater community, support your local theater artists. We need you. We need you now more than ever. And we are all working really hard to find new ways of bringing theater back into the lives of all of us who love this art form oh so much. So again, my thanks to Dr. Clarence Bayne, my thanks to our entire viewing community. Please go and check out our brand new, updated, beautiful website, blacktheatreworkshop.ca. On behalf of the staff and the board of directors of Black Theatre Workshop, we miss you all so much. Take good care of yourselves, take good care of your families, take good care of each other, and I look forward to seeing you at our next In Conversation With. Have a great day, everybody.